On this week's show, discussing transitioning from sites to bytes with Ryan Posnikoff from Bentley Systems. In this week's news, $100 million to train ChatGPT, facility owners are driving tech adoption, the future of work, and more. All right. It feels like just yesterday I sat down with Tanis. Tanis, it's good to see you.
Likewise, Jeff, and I think it was just yesterday. We had a great conversation, and we're carrying forward today with another exciting one.
It's still in the home office, still cold.
Still in the home office. You know, I was saying before the show started, I am cold. It is spring in Canada, but my goodness, it's 17 degrees outside. My home office is in the basement, though, and it's just cold down here. So I had the heater going next to my desk until we started the show, and I didn't want to cloud up my audio, so I turned it off. But it's still cold. I'm waiting for some sunshine. It's supposed to be like 26 degrees this weekend. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but sunny and warm. So I am looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
If you're not driving out there, you can do the math yourself. I'm not going to do the math right now. Although yesterday was beautiful and it was hot. And now today it is literally rain snowing here. And so I'm with you. It's cold. Yeah, that's the spring here. We call it mud season in the mountains. Yeah. You don't know what you're going to get. You might get a sunny day where it's like, put on the air conditioning, so to speak, which I do not have any air conditioning here, but put on the air conditioning in your car. And then the next day it's put on the heat in your car. So you never know. And I'm outnumbered today. You might have heard a voice already here. We have Ryan with us. Ryan, where are you coming to us from?
Also from Canada, Western Canada, but a little more inland than Tanis. And it's actually quite warm where I am, at solid mid to high 20s. And but I'm in that weird stage of the year too, where we run the air conditioning. We do have it in our house during the day. I have to run it at night because it's below 10, pushing 0. So yeah, we get this back and forth between the furnace and the air conditioning throughout this time.
Yeah, it's putting our HVAC systems to work. We're gonna have a whole lot of fun with Ryan. But before we do, we gotta pause for the cause. I'm here with Sasha Reed from Procore.org, and we're here on the Pause for the Cause. I'm really interested, and I wanted to bring out some of the partnerships that we're adding here at the ConTech crew. So why is it important for, shows like ours and industry partners like you to really come together and tackle mental health awareness and the suicide issues that we have in the industry?
It's a great question, and I think the thing to keep in mind is whenever you're talking about something as substantial as suicide awareness and as alarming as to statistics around construction being the second highest rates of suicide in industry, we'd be fooling ourselves if we thought that this was a one-player fix, meaning that it just takes one silver bullet or one easy button to solve this challenge. This is a multi-threaded challenge, if you will, and it's really something that is the responsibility of all of us. To lean in, to raise awareness, to provide tools and resources, to up-level conversations we have around, in construction, we're pretty much, hey, what's my job require me to get it done at any cost? Well, we now see what the outcome of that is. So I think it's important that we partner together to really have a unified voice around why mental health awareness is important, why it matters, and how we can frankly do better as an industry. It takes each of us leaning in to really create that.
I think you're absolutely right. And that's why we're changing the name of the cause for the show for the Pause for the Cause, so that we can really go after and we're not leaving preventconstructionsuicide.com and Cal Beyer. Cal started us on this awareness path. And, to me, it's like, we've been looking at the symptoms for so long. It's time to look at the source of the problem itself. And so that's what we're going to be doing here at the Pause for the Cause. You never know who's going to show up. If you're listening in and you have resources and you want to bring it to us, bring it to us. This is a free partnership. It's going to take us all pulling in the right direction. And it's what I'm passionate about here and what I think the entire crew is. And you at Procore.org are as well. So you just go to Procore.com/safety-qualified. But watch, we might soon have some more resources on thecontechcrew.com. Sasha, it is so awesome to sit down with you. I'm excited for our partnership. And listen, I want to let everybody listening in know that there are resources at Procore, but there's always preventconstructionsuicide.com. Or if you need help right now, dial 988 or text from your mobile phones for instant help. All right. You guys know we're back on YouTube. Check out youtube.com/@the ConTech Crew. You can troll me if you like. You can tell me what you like and what you don't like. Trust me, we got our first trolls out there, and I kind of feel like I made it somewhere new. You know, you haven't made it in the internet world until you have a troll. So thanks to my new trolls out there. Keep hitting me up. Keep smashing that subscribe button and making my son cringe every time I say that. So Ryan Posnikoff, you're with Bentley Systems now, but you took an interesting path to get here. So tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are today and the experiences that kind of drove you to it.
Yeah, it's I've been with Bentley Systems, a software company for pushing 7 years now. I gave myself 2 years when I first came, but yeah, definitely a different path, non-traditional into technology. I grew up in a household that had a construction business. My parents ran a residential commercial business, and spent my summers, weekends during school helping out, learning about plumbing, learning about heating and geothermal systems. Ended up going over to university when I graduated, and kind of made a goal to myself to get a degree. I did that in economics and politics, and jointly worked on a trade ticket. So I ended up jumping over to the oil and gas sector in northern Alberta. There was a big boom cycle taking place in the early 2000s, and originally started working as a surveyor's assistant. So just walking with the pole and being the guy that was helping out with the measurements on some greenfield projects, working on roadways and whatnot, and then ended up after a few years walking away with what we call in Canada Red Seal, so journeyman ticket in pipe fitting, steam fitting, and I did that pretty much right away. First job or two after getting my ticket, jumped into supervision, and then saw an opportunity to take some courses in work planning, so kind of like getting on that field level execution. At that time, my dad was doing that kind of work, and so he kind of gave me an inside scoop of what it was all about. So I took a week off of work and took a course. Ended up meeting Tanis. She was training the course at that time. That kind of, I guess, for me, really is what opened up the doors of opportunity in construction. That was the really big, found a big niche, high demand, low supply, and I also very quickly identified that there was at the time, a lack of leveraging even simple technology, even organization of data, organization of information, and I was very quickly able to start help developing processes, developing workflows that let us get our information quicker and get that data to the field and get documentation to the field and get the right information to the field. That was I'd say the biggest win. So yeah, a bit of a roundabout way to kind of get in technology. Now, I joined Bentley just about 7 years ago, working as originally as a consultant. So working with a bunch of our accounts around the globe, doing training courses, consulting on their projects, for a variety of types of projects. And I've moved around our construction space as it's grown quite substantially the last few years.
Yeah, it's a unique route to get there, but I think it grounds you, and it's something I think our listeners will really dig, is because, the time that you spent, even though it seems like, it's kind of an accelerated time through to be a pipe fitter and a steam fitter, and then the pole guy walking around, it drives how the work gets done.
Yeah.
And then it probably had a big impact to understand it from your father's point of view and laying out kind of what the future might look like. I'm wondering, how often you go back to those times and think about that as you're trying to get somebody or a company or a new process or something down.
Yeah, honestly, it's every day. I keep that in the back of my mind every day, and it kind of comes into we're talking about construction technology, and our space is obviously in the software side. There's a lot of really cool, exciting things taking place when it comes to the modeling and augmented reality. But I always step back and ask myself, well, how does this help the crews in the field? Or what does it matter to the crews in the field? How do they benefit, and how can they benefit from tech? And I'm always finding myself, I guess the biggest problems I always had in the field. I remember this, going back, my first job as a foreman, and I get thrown a binder of documents. It literally had 1,000 documents that I had to look through, and I was just told, go build this. I was like, okay, go build this. I'm like, what am I building? It's some pipe rack over on the north side of the site. Okay. And I always look back, that's probably one of like the defining moments for me when I look back and go, we collectively, the construction industry, have been failing those that are actually building projects, because when those kinds of circumstances happen, they're craftspeople, right? They're a craftsperson who knows what they're doing. They're good at what they do, but if you don't tell them what you want built, they're going to spend time. Well, for that time, I spent the first half of my day just trying to find the right documents. So my crew was effectively standing. I told them to go hide. I said, go hide. Go get some tools. I don't even know tools we need. So anyways, yeah, I think about that like on a regular basis. Like, how do we like get the right information? How do I simplify that process? How do we, the other big one for somebody working in the field is nobody wants to do paperwork. Nobody wants to tabulate information. How do we make that process as so painless as possible? And so they can get it in, because it is important for the business. It is important for everybody, but let's make it easy. Right. So
yeah,
that's my soapbox on that.
I love it. That binder sheet, like I would have built a binder, just a really big one. And here's your binder. I don't know. This is what you want. I don't get it. Yeah. And you're right. We especially because those crafts folks are innovating in and of themselves in what they do. So to hand over a binder, you're not communicating what you're looking for. You're saying, okay, this binder is now your 1,000 pages of steps, and you must go through these steps. And that's not treating the craft the way it should be treated. In fact, the craft, if you can explain the vision, might have an opportunity for you to do something better, different.
Oh, 100%. I mean, some of the greatest like innovations and execution I saw were from people who had decades of experience as a craftsperson, and they had executed similar works before in the past, and they were bringing up new ideas on how to, whether it be coordination of other crews at the same time, or bringing in different pieces of equipment. But those weren't parts of the plans that were given to us. But these craftspeople, they come in and they knew how to pull it off, right? They had a great idea, and it would often save time, definitely save money. And a lot of the time, it's coming back to the health and safety aspect. They're going, the way they originally planned it, that's not safe, but we can do it safer and quicker for you. That just comes from years of experience, right? So
yeah, and then communication. I mean, the simplest innovation is communication. So it's fantastic. Tanis, I know that brings up a lot for you.
Absolutely. Where do I even start? I want to take us back to a point that Jeff made. So Jeff, you said that the experience in the field really helps ground the the focus on technology and digital strategy. And I think that's a really important connection, right? Because we've all been in the digital space for a long time. How many meetings have you sat in where somebody at the table with a lot of field experience says, but you don't understand, you don't understand how we do this, what it's like in the field. Ryan, you are very uniquely positioned to say, actually, I do. And you're drawing on that field experience in a product director role now. So can you tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like? What does a day in the life of Ryan look like at Bentley Systems?
Yeah, I mean, it is true. I definitely, like I said, I draw upon that experience a lot, and it's in some respects kind of disarming to people when I get to meet with them on calls, and sometimes they think you're just talking to some software guy. But when I, bring up that, I've got actual experience and training behind in construction, it helps a lot. Actually, a lot of my colleagues in the SYNCHRO team, that's our construction line, come from industry. We've got a lot of people who come from heavy civil. We've got a lot of industrial. Got a lot of experience from a variety of projects around the world and different backgrounds. We've got electricians that have been in industry, and engineers and whatnot. But anyways, back to my day in the life. It's kind of all over the place at times. My particularly Mondays and Tuesdays are like most people, really hectic. Typically start my day, early morning working with some of my colleagues, or even users that are in Europe or North America or East Coast of North America. Tend to have a bit of a, I guess, downtime throughout late morning to early afternoon. And at that point, try to actually do my actual job, my work, which is, going through our products, identifying, strategic focuses for them, for integrations. What's our current backlog? What, are we reaching the targets we've set? Are there any, fires to put out or, support issues I need to help out with our accounts? And then the lion's share of the team that I work with on my product in particular are based in Australia. So just when I'm setting that afternoon grogginess from getting tired, they're all coming online 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon. So, and that's usually I spend a good chunk of my day where most of the, I guess, the knowledge work takes place. We're having to, have discussions, understand the challenges that we're dealing with on the tech side, and how does that solve, how's that going to help us on the the user side of things. And, we do always ask the question is, what are we doing today? Who is that going to help? Is that going to help, on a project? Is that going to help the owner? Is that going to help the project director? Is that going to help the project controls team? Or is that going to help the supervisor in the field? And nobody's more important than the other. It's just, we're always asking that question. Who is this addressing? What workflow is this addressing? And whose life are we trying to make better? And always be keeping that in mind. So of course, those are always at the end of the day questions for me when I'm tired. So.
That's such a great focus area.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Like, I do whatever, guys.
Go with your gut.
So for those listeners who may not be familiar with SYNCHRO, and some listeners are perhaps a little bit familiar with SYNCHRO, can you just give a quick explanation around what your product focus is, and then SYNCHRO as a whole, what that encompasses?
A lot of people and users are familiar with SYNCHRO as a 4D scheduling tool. So that's taking your 3D model, your BIM model, and augmenting it against time in the schedule. It's, you're considered a market leader in that space, and it has been for a decade plus. But, SYNCHRO, we've expanded that product offering substantially into a platform. So, a lot of users will use just pieces of the platform, but it's got a tip-to-tail solution that supports that early construction planning, inclusive of estimating via your model. It's got a lot of non-model based workflows. So you do all your scheduling, and you can do all your pre-planning work with your plot plans and your general arrangements, all the way through to web-based work. So you're taking away kind of democratizing the information, getting it away from just the BDC planner, but putting it into the hands of the construction manager, the supervisor, the inspector, and quite literally into the hands in the mobile app. Kind of in the middle of all this platform, product I work with and help direct is called Perform, SYNCHRO Perform. And, for me, the best way to describe that, it's two products, or it solves two big problems. One is, to my point earlier about simplification of information collection. So daily diaries, progress, timesheets. These things are incredibly important to everybody on a project, whether it be project accountant, project director, supervisor in the field. Timesheets are what get people paid. Progress is what gets the company paid. And all this is important. So we that's one of our big areas of focus is, simplifying that capture of information and getting that information so that it's coming in on a real time time frame. And then the other big part of that is doing something with that data. And that's really where it gets kind of exciting, where we take this data that's coming in at a bunch of different types of velocities and, structured and unstructured, and we're turning it into something valuable that it gives me my daily reports. It gives me my site report, my safety reports. It gives me my, weekly progress. It gives me my trends on where are we going? Like, what are we at today? What was our plan versus our actual? And where are we going tomorrow? Are we profitable? Are we winning? I guess the best way to put it, right? Are we winning the project right now? Contracting in particular has in such tight margins right now that, that matters. That matters a substantial amount. And the better we can do that, the better that those insights can be given to contractors and to owners and really the whole supply chain, the more likely we are going to, meet those schedules, meet those budgets, be profitable, and survive another day, basically.
Well, you hit a couple of interesting parts on assumptions because, as a speaker, and I don't know, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so I'm going to drop this one on Ryan in live.
Oh no.
I actually show SYNCHRO from my early days. I show it on stage all the time, from an experience with Greg Demachek that introduced me to it when it was, before it was with you guys, before it was its own system.
Yeah.
Basically showing the progression of a 4D schedule live to somebody through a HoloLens and having a supervisor in what was supposed to be a demo stop and say, whoa, we can't do that. Roll that back.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And that aha moment's been an aha moment for me for a long time. But I mean, I'm on stage all the time. I got to talk flashy, right? But you just hit on something a couple of episodes ago with Will McManus from DSI that we talked about, is like, really at the base of all this is the really non-flashy day-to-day. I love that. Are you paying people?
Yeah.
And are you getting paid? And can you get paid? And overall, are we on track? And I think that's an interesting part. Two-part question from that. The first one is, where is SYNCHRO getting the base data so that you have something to compare it to, right? A lot of the problem with some of the flashier stuff is you got great data with nothing to refer it to. So where's SYNCHRO getting the data up front, I think would be my first question. And how is it loading that data?
The data of our users is their data. So we're limited how much we can use as far as, I guess, modifying other or giving analytics towards other organizations. But we do have quite a few organizations that have enough project data leveraging SYNCHRO. And they've been using that for, a really interesting space on the front end of a project during estimating is reference class forecasting. So they're taking prior historical information on, how productive they were on particular activities, finding similarities between the new project they're looking at and looking at prior ones and referencing against that. So they're using that information for, and as they gain more and more of their data, more and more information on their projects, they're getting very, very good at ultimately predicting the productivity and the capabilities of their organization. So that's really, fascinating stuff there. I mean, to the point you brought up with Greg, I work with him quite regularly, and he's pushing some pretty cool boundaries with the metaverse stuff now too. On the model side of things, we had a really good experience. Before I got into product management, I was running our services team for a couple years, professional services team, and we're doing a schedule review with one of our accounts. Now they're doing all the scheduling. We're helping them kind of just work with the tools, and almost right away, somebody had said, "Wait a second, the piles aren't put in yet. Why? I don't. There's something wrong with the schedule." And what that had a spin-off effect is they had scheduled the piling at the wrong time frame, and then they looked at the actual calendar when they were planning the actual piling versus when they actually had the equipment on order. There's like a 4-month gap. But this is great. At first jaws dropped, but we were at such an early enough stage of the planning of the project that they said, "Oh, well, just get on a phone call. Let's go fix it." Right. That right there, that made that prevented the project from going over budget. That was a massive win, right? And schedule too, because this was on an interstate highway. So you're not just dealing with small impact to say a building or whatnot. You're dealing with highways being shut down. You're dealing with multiple DOTs clamoring at you saying, "Why are we behind?" or what's the holdup? So all that has a spin-off effect and indirect costs to supply chain for other projects or grocery stores or everything, right? So
it's an amazing example, and also brings to light like one of my least favorite things in our business, especially software, is ROI, because you found that problem. You can't quantify all of what you just said.
Yeah.
Right? How do you quantify a mistake you never make?
So that's a good point. I struggle with that one all the time, because you get the question, what's the ROI? Like, well, I mean, a project is a unique snowflake in its own respects, right? Yeah. We can get a good idea of what it would have done, but there's a little bit of like black magic and saying, well, what if this happened?
Well, And you bring up that example, and it's like, okay, I can put a hard cost on a couple of things in there, but
Yeah.
what cost do I put on not getting my ass chewed out 4 different times by the DOT, by the local jurisdiction, by the police that have to be organized for rerouting traffic, and then the grocery store person who's yelling and making phone calls, all that stuff. Like, what is that worth to you? It's worth a lot of money to me not to be chewed out, but you know.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's hard to classify that ROI all the time. I mean, there's certain ways you can do it. You can say, well, probability was it would have taken us this duration and this kind of cost, and we can show you that. But really, at the end of the day, it could have been double that, could have been triple that, right? You never know, right? So yeah, that is always a challenge, right?
So what I like to pivot that into is are we doing better? Do you think we're doing better these days? Do you think the combination of the industry changing, folks like you coming into the industry, from the industry and into technology, 7 years doing it, do you think we're getting better?
Yes and no. I don't know if I see technology supporting a lot of advancements in the schedule and the cost. It's also supporting a lot of advancement in us, getting better insights earlier on. We're definitely seeing some projects. We've got a couple projects that are leveraging 4D, or they're using some of like the performance management tools, and they are finding schedule optimizations early on in the project. Even during the execution stage, we've got a couple projects where they've identified that they save about 3-4 months worth of rework. That's 3-4 months worth of schedule, right? And that was just because they simplified the communication and collaboration between the field and the office. That's really what they did. They broke down that barrier, and those reworks, didn't exist. So again, that's back to the ROI question. Did it really cost us anything, or did we actually save? But yeah, you did, because you can expect that there's going to be, there's a float for in the schedule for rework. So I think we're getting better. I mean, I think maybe the cynic in me too looks at this, and because we are getting better, we are using technology out in the field, to whether it be to use GPS to run our dirt moving equipment and all that. We're seeing opportunities now. The forward thinking business development and estimators are saying, hey, we can maybe squeeze our schedule a little bit more to tell the client that we'll get it done a month earlier. And I think there's to try to squeeze some more juice out of the rock, which comes at the risk there that are you identifying all risks? Are you getting rid of too much float in your schedule? Because we have to plan for the unknown unknowns, and that's just a guaranteed in construction. We always have unknown unknowns, right? We have to anticipate that, whether it be a weather event like a hurricane that may or may not come this year, or I've worked on a lot of old brownfield projects where nobody knew what was underground. So when you put that shovel down, you're waiting to see, So, but I think we're getting better. I definitely think we're getting better. I think back to the idea of the digitization of operations, when we're capturing our progress. How much is it? How much is it earning us? How much is it costing us? And how much time is it taking us to execute work? A lot of forward-thinking companies now are taking that information and using it for their future project estimating, their future project planning, and actually leveraging the data, not just going off the thumb suck. So it's definitely happening. But you always have to be cognizant of things like optimism bias, and that can cloud our judgment. So.
Yeah, you hit a couple things there, and I like that you're right. It's a balanced approach, right? We're building a great foundation, I think was what I heard there too, is like, we haven't reached our potential and we have a long way to go, but we're creating the foundation to reach that potential, right? That the speed of innovation goes up as you build that good foundation and the understanding.
It's not uncommon knowledge that traditionally the construction space has always been a real laggard when it comes to investing in technology. We're seeing that really pick up rapidly now, but I think we're, to your point there, the outcomes of that, the historical data, the historical learnings, and even just a whole new workforce that's coming out of school just now. We're going to start really seeing the benefits of that coming up in this decade. We're going to really start seeing that coming to fruition, because now we're starting to see that adoption of technology, and you don't really, it's almost like this leading indicator of what's going to come next.
I think you're right. I think my balance there too, though, is, you hit on something people rarely talk about, and that's, squeezing more juice out of the rock. I think we have to change a little bit of that.
Yeah.
We have to be careful in not just saying, and we do this in construction, right? Like, I'm stealing from one of Tanis's questions here, but there was an old McKinsey article about, how late we are and how over budget we are. And I'm like, have we consistently gotten better? Yes and no. Because the problem is, yes, we know better, but we keep trying to squeeze the rock.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, how about we just get more certain? We get safer, more predictable, more like so many owners, are just like, just tell me when I'm actually going to get it. Now, some of them are like, I want it faster. Like, listen, it takes a group of people to say the data says you want that, but we can't provide it at that speed, safely, cost effectively. Like, hey, look, if cost's not a problem, great.
Yeah.
But then you're like, hey, but cut the budget too. So I like the balance of not being too optimistic, and not looking to change it too much. Just be more predictable, right?
Yeah, I think predictable is the right way of putting it. Honestly, I think at the core, a lot of the challenges we have in industry, it's how we contract out projects, how projects are very adversarial in nature. Even when we get into like collaborative style contracts, there's still a adversary background. Like people still have a different email address. Even if they are a JV, they're still being paid by somebody else. And there's this element there of all that does. It forces us to distribute risk in different ways. So the owner distributes risk to their client rep, to the construction manager, who distributes their risk to the various contractors, who distribute their risk to subcontractors. And all we're doing is, from an insurance perspective, we're just increasing the costs. Everybody's throwing in their risk uplift. Everybody's throwing in their risk float into the schedule. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when it's like that game kids play, you whisper in an ear, and what comes back to you. It's kind of the same thing with projects when we contract them in such a way that, owner says this, and by the time it gets back to the owner, it's like, it doesn't even look anything like what we were, planning on, because everybody's kind of protecting their own fortress, right?
I want to open it up to Tanis to ask a question, but I will tell you that was one of my talks at Autodesk University quite a few years back. Was the modern telephone game? That's what we're playing, and we need to play the digital game where everybody's on the same line, FaceTiming at the same time, and get rid of that. So,
yes,
but Tanis, I know exactly. I know you have a couple of questions around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm thinking back to my childhood days playing telephone, right? 3 people down the line, the message was completely different. People were just making things up. So, as adults, if we don't fix that structure, it's not any better, right? By the time it gets to the last person in the communication chain, they have no idea what the original message was. It's completely changed at that point. I was having a really good conversation with somebody in the industry a few days ago around IPD, or integrated project delivery. And, there's two distinct approaches that really need to happen in tandem. One is contracting collaboratively. So integrated project delivery is all about collaborative contracting and getting everybody working on the same team. There was a great presentation at the CURT conference this year, which I was at, around integrated project delivery. And somebody made the comment, you'll be amazed what we can accomplish when everybody is playing offense. And I'm a big sports fan. I was like, that captures it perfectly. But then there's acting collaboratively. So there's 2 parts, right? Contracting collaboratively and acting collaboratively. And this person that I was talking to and having this conversation with, they're working on an IPD-like project. It's not in its truest form IPD. And he said, at the beginning going in, it was great. And, we were really sold on the whole collaboration portion of it. And then when we actually got into the project, the acting collaboratively part was missing. And that it puts people into a state of disillusionment, right? Because you go in with high expectations and an excitement for a new way of working. And then when that doesn't actually transpire, you're kind of sad about it, because you want to be in the position where everybody is playing offense, and there's a lot of upside, and obviously a lot of morale benefits, but financial benefits as well. Talking about that McKinsey article, the average published in 2017, the average capital project runs 20 months late and 80% over budget. I mean, those numbers are terrifying, and going into a capital project, that's just how it is. Those are the numbers. So Ryan, you made a good point that I want to touch on, and you said the investment in technology deployment in the industry is picking up. What are you seeing as the main drivers of that? Is that an effort to really move the needle on capital project performance, or is it a result of the remote work and digital needs of COVID, or maybe a combination of those and other things? What are you seeing as the main drivers?
I think it's actually a few different things. I think there's an element of we've got a lot of people entering industry that have entered industry in the last 10 years. Coming out of engineering school, coming out of construction management school, coming out of different, even trades backgrounds. And they've grown up with tools, with technology. They've grown up with it a part of their life, but they're now in a position of influence and decision-making in these organizations. And they're going, we got to do this better. Like, this has to happen better. Why are we, doing that pen and paper? Why are we doing it on some homebrewed Excel spreadsheet? Why are we doing this? I think that's a big aspect. I see a lot of people that, kind of come from the same generation as myself and going, that's their expectation now. They're in leadership roles. They're in project management roles. They're in, leadership at the enterprise level, and they're making these changes happen. That's a big part. I think too, there's been a lot of proven value out of technology over the last decade. And I think technology is a very broad thing to say when we're talking construction tech. I'm focusing on the software side of technology, right? There's a whole slew of technology we're talking about that supports construction, but on the software side, which has often had pushback, why we've always done it this way, why would we change? You're seeing that change because there's been proven value on projects over the last decade. And now you're seeing leaders in organizations requiring it. But more importantly, I'm starting to see a lot more owners, the asset owners, that are saying, you got to do it better. I want to see this. I want a digital twin at the end of the day. I want my data. You're building me an asset. I also want all the information from the asset. And contractually making that a requirement. And that's really, I don't know if the person who's cutting your check is requiring something, people jump. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things there, but I think definitely, the value's been proven now, and people have seen it. They've moved from project to project, and they're starting to, even workers out in the field are demanding. They're like, I don't want to communicate via email. I want a tool that can give me everything I need in the palm of my hands when I need it, and I can get my job done. Right.
So I want to dig into the proven value point a little bit, because this is a topic area that professionals in the industry struggle with sometimes. And it's, if you're piloting something new, demonstrating, quantifying the value that new thing, software, hardware, insert technology here, created. And to our earlier discussion, how do you quantify something that didn't happen, that you prevented from happening? What advice would you give to technology champions out in the industry that are really pushing boundaries and trying to find and deploy software that really does create value, but also demonstrate at the end of a pilot or proof of concept that value was realized and can be ultimately scaled across the organization on other projects? What tips would you give professionals out there that are really trying to make the business case for it?
I mean, and again, back to our earlier conversation, that's a tough one at times. The Goldilocks situation is you've got a project that is comprised of two nearly identical scopes of work, and they're large enough that you can address any kind of risk. They'd be worth at least several months or more worth of work. And you compare one against the other, have one that's adopting a new technology or a new work process. And I guess that's a good point too, is technology isn't a replacement for a stringent work process, workflow, right? It is there to support it. It's there to make sure that the process is doing its job, but you're not going to just plop it on the project and go, magically have it working. You need the people working with it. You need the people using the technology. So that's the Goldilocks situation. I think really the big one is, you kind of got to start that whiteboard, whether it be a digital one or not, but you need to start that whiteboard. And every time somebody says, hey, you know what, we think we found an opportunity here to save some time or save some schedule, or, like that really blunt in your face example with the piling where the equipment was out of sequence, mark it down, capture it and say, equipment was out of, we had equipment ordered. It was going to be 4 months delayed based off of our original plan. We've identified it today, and it just saved us, X amount of dollars by not having to order it up tomorrow. Right. So you have to capture those kinds of things. Another really, valuable way to capture, ROI, particularly when we get down to like the, I call it like the tactical stage of construction when we're boots on the ground, executing the work, is going to be, how rapidly can we collect the information from the field? Are we requiring a massive administrative team to tabulate that? Or can I, it's me sitting in the office, can I be somebody that can go quickly pull a report and know that report is reflecting everything that took place yesterday or even this morning? And being able to do that and not have to have an administrative team pulling together everything that you did last week and reporting on 5 days ago, that's where you start to get the real value, because by getting those real-time reports where you can say, we've got an event that's taking place that started this morning at 9 a.m., rather than finding out about it 2 days later, I can go into action upon it today, and that's where you start to capture it. But you have to really be you have to have somebody who's dedicated to focusing on finding the value. And kind of back to the term, squeezing out juice out of the rock. They need to be looking at every avenue on where a change to their work process, a change to the technology has identified, helped identify risk, helped make somebody safer, had an opportunity to optimize, procurement. So maybe it's a wishy-washy way of saying it, but you really have to be very serious about finding that ROI.
I think that's spot on. You have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
If we look at lessons learned, I can't tell you how many lessons learned meetings I've sat in at the end of the project when the majority of the team is long gone, and you sit down, you're like, let's capture our lessons learned. And everybody's like, I don't remember what happened. That was 2 years ago. So you have to be intentional through the journey. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You're on to the next one already. You're like, wow, worry about that later. I'm going to throw that out there to listeners. If anybody has any ideas for the digital whiteboard Ryan just referenced on an app, hook us up. We would definitely benefit from being able to just, you're sitting in a meeting, you're like, that's something that technology did. That software saved money. Let's capture it, right? Being able to document that on the fly, I think would be incredibly helpful.
At the ConTech crew, we focus on technology that solves industry problems, and we've always believed in our sponsors. So much so that I went to work for one of them. So today, I want to talk to you about Join. Every construction project is a unique prototype. And it's actually shaped by thousands of decisions that impact the owner's business case, design, and the budget. Today, the communication driving these decisions is disjointed across all the stakeholders. Work happens in email, Excel, estimating, resulting in delays, waiting for decisions, waiting for access to information, and sometimes that information is outdated and incomplete. Managing the expectations of the team and keeping the project moving forward is a constant challenge, and a lot of times drives skepticism amongst the contributors. Join empowers general contractors to build with confidence and maximize the potential of every project by connecting these owners through new workflows that fit into your existing processes. We bring design teams and trade partners into a single platform. There's transparency and collaboration in the decision-making, which builds trusts and sets projects up for success. You might be asking yourself, do you need another tool? Well, let me tell you, Join fits in seamlessly with your processes and your other tools. In fact, we're here to help those other tools. Regardless of your estimating system or your project management process, Join will be a valuable added resource without disrupting those other systems and your teams. Check out Join, the collaborative project delivery platform for the built environment. Learn more at join.build.
We have actually, it's a good point. We got a few users using one of our products that it has the model, of course, but it's got a bunch of forms workflows built in. So forms you can tag to the model. And that's actually one of the things that's been used for risk management early on in the projects is just tagging. So it's, whether it be an RFI or just an identified risk, and going into the model, and this is accessible to everybody on the project that has it. It's not just the VDC planner, but the construction manager, the superintendent, the foreman, and they just quickly tag it. They don't have to give a bunch of details. They just go, it's right here on this spot of the model. I found a problem, and everybody gets it at their hands. And it's, it's opening up that collaboration point, right? Rather than,
Nice.
rather than having to like send an email, call on the radio, call on the phone. It's, this is where it is. This is exactly what it is. And, somebody go deal with this. But we got to address it.
Or what you probably did many times in your career, you go back to the office, find somebody, say, come with me, I need to show you something. And you get a whole crowd of people walking around. 4 hours later, everybody's aware of the problem, right? Or you can just go in, tag it, and communicate in near real time. I mean, game changer. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. When we're seeing people adopt that, it's that kind of process. It becomes where the technology doesn't slow them down. It actually makes them, run more efficiently, right? And it becomes just something where you just quickly, hey, here's my information. I'm moving on to my next thing. Because, the crews in the field, they're busy. Like they don't want to spend time trying to find a field engineer or, go get some help. If it's going to take them more than 20 minutes, they'll just go like force an issue through and just make it work. Right.
Well, they're going to get it done. And because that's what they're paid to do. And if you can be amplifying and making all that happen faster, they can continue to work in process and keep it going. And I'm interested in, I'm going to pivot you a little bit because you did talk about the model and being able to tag things and making that more collaborative and democratized. But you also referenced owners, and I had Chris Hager on from OAC Services a while back, and he talked about the change in the asset itself and that modern owners are looking at it as more of you're handing over a computer than you are necessarily a structure that does one thing or another, whether it's a refinery to a data center to a campus. And so that's amplifying the need for what's commonly referred to as a digital twin. Although here on the crew, y'all know I call it a data twin. We can argue all you want. Right. It is a data twin because
I like you.
See, it's a data twin, but I'm wondering about that process and, where we are in that journey, especially given that I think personally, as owners look at it this way, it's a competitive advantage for winning the work, for doing the work. So where are we in that journey there on the digital data twin side of things? Yeah. From your perspective, and where do we have to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus on digital twin right now, if seen broadly across industry, really is focused on the asset. It's focused on the as-built asset, right? IoT connections. It's that idea of all the data that's related. It isn't a 3D model. It's an aspect. It's a way of visualizing the project or the asset. But at the end of the day, it is the data behind that model, right? I would argue that the BIM model itself is just another way of filtering and sorting information, right? It's a lot easier for me to, go look up the background information on I got some sensors on a bridge by just going to where I know they are on the bridge than it is for me to find the bridge name, find the location in some spreadsheet or whatnot. So it's good, but decidedly very much focused on the asset. Mm-hmm. I'd say the big thing, right? That obviously I'm focused on the construction span, the SYNCHRO team's construction on construction. The big thing we're seeing is this idea of the construction digital twin. And what's fascinating about the construction digital twin is what it looks like today is not going to look the same tomorrow, just like the asset we're building, right? And this construction digital twin is bringing in a whole different slew of data sets. A big one, and the obvious one, visual is reality capture. What did we actually build this last week versus what we planned, and showing that, right? And that's valuable information. I could think of a dozen different things real quickly on how that supports us. That helps us with optimizations of crew movement. It helps us with where should we be doing our laydowns, our next laydowns? What should be our next, do we have to change our planning scope for next week or next month or next quarter? So that's really interesting, and visual. I think another big part of that construction digital twin, though, is also a lot of our usage of equipment. How many pieces of equipment do we have on site? What are they costing us? What's the fuel consumption? Big thing too that we're some of our tools are being utilized as well as what's the emissions? What's the emissions of the tools? What's this going to cost us on greenhouse gases? That's a front and center topic, and it's something that we focus on that during the asset management stage a lot, but during construction, that's when we build the absolute majority of the emissions that go out in a project from equipment. Concrete's a big emitter, right? That's another big one. So optimization of concrete usage. And so that's where that idea of the construction digital twin starts to really come to, I guess, fruition and start providing value to a bunch of different stakeholders. Obviously the contractor, the constructors, they're gaining value. They've got some direct insights, but owners who are, very concerned about the emissions of their project and their asset going forward. But they also, at the end of the day, those owners are they just got this absolute massive Bible of information now available to their digital twin at the end of the day. And that could be who built a particular section. Are there, possible issues with maintenance in the future? And all of this comes from that construction stage.
It's funny. The asset is usually the thing people talk about the most.
Yeah.
And I love the idea. I hadn't heard about, or at least it framed, the construction digital twin that's actually mirroring what we're doing on the job site at the time. And following it. Tanis, I know this brings up a few questions for you.
Absolutely. And we were actually talking on the show yesterday a little bit about digital twinning and the kind of nirvana point of being able to replace pipe spools in an industrial facility without having to send a crew out with tape measures to go out and measure what's there, right?
Yeah.
It's all about having true to life representation of the physical asset. And I love the concept of a construction digital twin. And that's what draws us to construction, right? Is it's dynamic.
Yeah.
Things change all the time. And you have to be able to interpret what's happening and make very quick decisions, sometimes with imperfect information, for the best interests of the project. And there's an art and a science to that. And having technology, to your point, to be able to supercharge that process and empower the team, that's exciting. And it gets us to the point where we're handing over not only a physical asset, but a digital asset or a construction data twin. If I put it in Jeff's verbiage, we'll put a tagline on that in the show notes. But what a valuable handover from the construction activities outside of the benefit that construction digital twin or construction data twin is creating for the team throughout the process. But I have to ask, Ryan, because when we talk about digital twinning, and there's a lot of discussion on social media, obviously it's a popular topic at events, there's a crowd of people who are kind of naysayers, right? They're like, we don't need that. That sounds like a lot of work. What we're doing is just fine. So part of adoption is winning those people over and showing value. But are there other barriers to digital twinning or data twinning for construction or asset operations, I guess either space, that the industry is still grappling with and needs to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I think it goes back to our conversation earlier on contract arrangements. How do we contract out our projects?
Yeah.
If the digital twin isn't required, if the asset digital twin isn't required by the owner, well, then you get this. That's not my job. From the stakeholders, from the contractors and whoever's building the project. If they're not going to pay me to do it, I'm not doing it. Owners are demanding it. We're seeing a lot of different owners from a bunch of different industries that are requiring it. Even, honestly, even, in the US, a lot of the DOTs are starting to require it for inspections. They want to have that digital twin so they can do an inspection, and they have IoT devices that are, capturing usage rates of bridges. So they, a big thing obviously is some of the aging infrastructure. What needs to be repaired or even replaced. So they're starting to demand it. But then a lot of these, I'm seeing a lot of forward-thinking contractors that are seeing this as a way to add value. And there's two values that they're adding. One is they're adding value to their client, to saying, we will provide you this at the end. We'll provide you these two items, right, as a handover. But then, kind of nefariously, they're getting value of building that while they're doing construction itself. So they're doing optimizations, they're doing risk assessments earlier on. They're finding opportunities to become more profitable the project by, better estimating the project earlier on. So they're, these forward-thinking contractors, and there's becoming a bigger and bigger group of them now, are leveraging this digital twin for both selling it as an asset to the asset manager or asset owner, and using it along the way to actually, help uplift their organization substantially in their own optimizations and risk management. So it's a lot of the topic has changed from, well, that's not my job or it's too much work, to a lot of people saying, well, how do we get started? And I think, back to the point earlier, I think there's a lot of people that are in industry, they've been in industry for 10, 20 years now, that have grown up with this idea of, a digital world. We've been talk about the metaverse. We see all these kinds of things taking place over the last few decades, and we go, why not? Why don't we do it? Like, let's do it. And they're in these positions of leadership in organizations, and they can make it happen. The skill sets are there, the technology is there, and it's a matter of bringing it together. And again, right back to the whole, it's got to be collaborative, though, because you'll never build an asset physically without working together and collaborating. That digital twin is requiring, data from vendors and subcontractors and government organizations. It's all required to make it truly data rich, is the big thing.
Absolutely. So owners are starting to require this.
Yeah.
They're starting to identify the need for digital twinning in contracts. How would a GC or an EPC that has never even ventured into the digital twinning space, how would they start? Because you mentioned that teams are starting to explore, they're starting to get ready.
Yeah.
What's the first step? What's the recommendation you would give a team as the first step to start a digital twinning journey for a team that's never ventured into this space at all?
I think the biggest thing is you need to have a champion internally that has a vision, has to be a visionary. They have to have an element, whether it's them or somebody that works with them, that's the doer, that can, say, all right, we're gonna take these disparate model file types and we're gonna bring them together. We might not even have a model right away, but they have to have that champion within the organization and the supportive leadership to make it happen. That's a really, really big thing. I have seen it kind of come from grassroots a little bit. One project we've been supporting, and just, actually we don't even support, they just are running with it on their own with our tools, but it's been really neat to get check-ins from them. They've been, taking advantage of drone photo capture, and they have a bunch of subcontractors that are, putting in requests for drone photo capture on various areas of the project, for whether it be for as-built information, or a big one they're using right now is for inspections. And what they're doing while they're capturing these drone photos, they got drones flying every single day on this project. They're inherently creating a reality model of the project as it's going. But the intent initially wasn't for them to create a reality model. The intent was, well, we're going to use a drone to get to these locations, do an inspection, prove that it's the complete, and then we have a great video or a great photo. Now, they had this visionary, on the project site, said, well, we've got enough info here. Let's turn it into something cool. So now they've got this digital twin that's been, every week is being updated and being, compared. Now what they're doing is comparing it against their schedule. So yeah, I think it really comes down to, you got to have somebody who's a visionary. There's more of them out there. There's a lot of people that have this idea and that are like excited about the idea. And that's the kind of the exciting thing about when we talk specifically about the digital twin space, and anybody who's really working on it, is they get excitable about it. It's cool. I mean, it's not just that it's like flashy and cool, interesting. It's providing real value to a bunch of stakeholders, and I think that's a big one. Is this tool, is this technology, is this work practice, what value is it providing, and to whom is it providing that value? And the digital twin is really it's proving to show value to everybody, right? Everybody's gaining from it.
Absolutely. And back to your original point, the question that you're asking is, how does this help, right? And who does it help? And I think that's the fundamental question in the technology space that we have to ask ourselves, is who are we assisting with this? Who are we helping with this? Whether it's development, deployment, support, increasing awareness, how are we helping? Because that's really the role of technology. It's an enabler. It's an assister.
Yeah.
I have to ask one more question on the champion, because I love the concept of having a champion. Somebody needs to be, shouting from the rooftops, rah digital twinning, right? And sharing that story. Where does that person sit in the organization? So if we think strategically, is that a person in the IT department? Is that a person in the engineering team? Or is it an executive role? Is that somebody who is taking a seat at the boardroom table as digital twinning becomes a more prevalent deliverable, but also a core component of digital transformation strategy within EPCs and contractors?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because I think it depends on the organization. It depends on the, I guess, level of digital sophistication of the organization. Executive level is always nice. I think the challenge with executive level is executives are really busy, and they are going to need to have somebody that can roll up their sleeves, and they can champion it. The executive level, say we as an organization are doing this, but they have to have a lieutenant that's going to be rolling up the sleeves and going and doing some of the dirty work. Who are we going to use for vendors? What do we need for data? Who do we need to get trained? That's a really, really important role. And I see that as somebody who should be at the corporate enterprise level, who is project services supporting projects. But there needs to be an aspect of, or background, I'd say, of that person of engineering, construction, who's been out in the field or has at least spent some time working on projects. I remember hearing somebody say years ago that they figured a year on a project, like working physically on a project, was the equivalent of 4 years in an office as far as what you can learn, right?
Mhm.
And I actually kind of believe that. And maybe for stress level too, but definitely for what you can learn, because there's no other space I can't think of any other industry where you perform so many different activities and learn so many different things by first coffee that you do on a construction site. So having somebody who's got that kind of background, even just a couple of years of it, they're going to bring so much value to driving the adoption of a digital twin. But there has to be a commitment at the enterprise level. It has to be committed. We're going to put money into it. We're going to put time into it, and also to the point of ROI. Whoever's championing it has to have manage it like a project where we have specific stage gates. At stage gate 1, we're going to be at a certain point of maturity in our organization, and then by the end of all the stage gates, we know that we've proven value to the digital twin implementation. We've gained value as a constructor, and we provided value to our owner.
I like it. You kind of maybe advertently or inadvertently described the same thing from a digital twin and a process like the drone.
Yeah.
Stacked to what was the purpose of it at its initial level. We wanted to get to a certain site. We wanted to inspect that site and see where we were and possibly get somebody paid for that work. And then you had somebody at the next level up that went, hey, wait a minute, this is probably giving us more information than that.
Yeah.
And then at the next level, hey, we can do even more with that. And I think as an organization, that's what you have to have. You have to have a today, a tomorrow, and a 5 years from now. And those are the people that have to be together.
Yeah, it kind of gets me excited because we've had some, we've got our technologies that we built for contractors and owners, and they have specific use cases, specific needs, and specific workflows. And then we get this aspect of what I kind of call as user misbehavior and misusing products, but coming up with really cool ideas to use the products that are generating value that we never even anticipated. Which is actually one of the coolest things being in the tech space, is getting to see we're providing a tool at the end of the day. We've got a toolkit, a toolbox that we're providing. Provide support with those tools. But at the end of the day, the really smart people are the ones that are using the tools. They're the ones that are going out there and they're pushing the boundaries, like the point of the drones that were just used for inspections and getting paid. And then somebody said, hold on a second here. We got enough information to turn this into a as-built model. I think that's where we start to get really exciting, is, people that are coming up with new ideas, new use cases with existing technology, and completely flipping on its head what its original intent was for, but actually providing extra value, right? Mm-hmm. And then we look at it as a technology company and go, yeah, that's really cool. How do we support you more?
Yep. I'll give you this so you can use it at Bentley. We call it an artful use case.
Artful use case. Yes, I like that.
Artful use case.
Yes.
I have seen many a technology. I've seen many a technology bend to do some things maybe it wasn't meant to do, and we want to encourage that, because then too, as software companies and as designers of this stuff, we have an opportunity to understand how not to break some of the artful things you're doing, because it's usually bringing up some sort of a problem. So
exactly. Yeah.
So there's that marriage between the industry, technology, our backgrounds, the way it goes.
Yeah.
And I think, Brian, that's your mic drop. That's
cool.
your moment.
Awesome. Thanks.
I dig it. We're excited that we had you here today with us. As always, we're going to take you along to the news with us. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up and get us on into the construction technology news of the week, because we have a battle coming. Tanis, start us off.
All right. So my first article today is from Yahoo Finance. New study reveals building owners are driving digital project delivery in design and construction. So this is coming from the Dodge Construction Network. They did a study of large organizations. So in order to qualify to participate, you had to have annual construction projects totaling $100 million or more. So these are big projects. The owners that participated in the study, general findings, are rapidly embracing digital tools. So the love for digital is there, which of course we're excited about in the ConTech crew. That's awesome. We love to see teams embracing technology. But they are also increasingly requiring project teams to use these tools throughout design and construction. So we're starting to see, and now documented in research, that owner drive starting to change the equation a little bit. So anybody out there, probably not listening to the ConTech crew if you're not into tech, but if you're out there and you're listening and you're like, I don't need any technology, I can do this with a pen and paper. Not a good idea, number one. But number two, it's probably going to hit your contract here soon if it's not already in there. So these tools are changing the way we build and embracing them. It's the future. Asset owners are requiring their use, getting on board with tech, loving tech, getting excited about tech. It's the way we're going. And we're hoping on these shows that we're doing that for you. We're helping you get excited about new tech. But if you're still on the fence, it's going to be there. So love it anyway. What do you think, Jeff?
I say you got to find a way to love it. I like the report too, because I think it goes to what we talked about with Koila as well, is that like it's not about demanding that the data happen, or it's about identifying what it is you need and why you need it, and then working together in ways that can share that. Too much of the process and a lot of the resistance we've seen over time has been that it's like, well, I got to do this in all these different systems because of the data interoperability issues that we have. And it's an interesting one because Avocado's behind, helping out with this through Dodge Data. And that's what Avocado is focused on. They are focused on, integrating PMIS systems and other systems to move that data around. There is others in that space that are working after each other. Again, a great arms race to see people sharing data, because it really is about tell me what you need and let me deliver that to you, and not so prescriptive. But yeah, like you said, if you ain't ready, it's coming. And it's going to be a strategic part of winning work. I mean, you're going to have to do it if you want to continue to work, especially at that $100 million and above level. It just, to me, if you're at that level, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you're not doing it. But however, I do know there's a lot of paper hidden on job sites. So Ryan, I'm interested in your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming. And I it's funny. I look back at, have any of you guys ever walked into a drafting room? The original ones where they had like the drafting tables all over the place? Probably not, because they don't exist anymore.
Well, wait. My first job 10 years ago at a masonry, they had them.
Yeah.
And one or two were still used, not exactly the way the drafting tables were used. They were more, what are those, the digiboards where they would like tap.
Yeah.
And I used one for my first ever stand-up office. That was my stand-up desk. I just transformed it and put a clamp on it.
Yeah.
So I have seen it. I mean, I know they exist.
They do exist, but I mean, it wasn't, 30 years ago where, entire engineering floors were just drafting tables, right? And shifting of documentation. You do see them now. They're usually in like the closet room of an office, or see a couple kicking around like a standing desk. I've used one as a standing desk too. We had one in my house growing up, because my dad was always looking at blueprints, right? So we had one, but I guess my point being is like that, that was 30 years ago, and that kind of workflow is gone. Now we got generative design that's being used on computers. Designers, engineers, they're using the technology to generate their model rapidly, or they're even just their 2D plan sets. But it's coming. It's already here. I'd say, if anything, there's a few holdouts. It's just a matter of those holdouts choosing or not choosing to adopt the technology. It's going to decide the future of their companies.
Absolutely. So just drawing one more data point from that article before we move on. Over 90% of owners surveyed reported that they're developing data-related requirements for their project team members and looking at ways to improve data exchange. So, that's 9 out of 10 owners surveyed. We're not sure what the other one's doing, but we'll figure that out in future interviews. I guess we'll have more owners on the show. But 9 out of 10 are looking at data requirements, structured data requirements.
That's a good point. Yeah, the structured data is a big one. I mean, when we look at if you look at all the data created in the entirety of an asset life, the vast majority, lion's share, is during construction, and so much of that is unstructured. So much of it is just, I don't want to say useless, but it's just a blob of data, and it ends up means that we don't have it turn it into whether it be useful insights or what actually took place and when it took place. But those data requirements are becoming more and more. I'm seeing that on a regular basis.
So as we pivot to our next article, we're talking about large amounts of data. It's probably a great segue. This one's from Wired. OpenAI CEO says the age of giant AI models is already over. So if you are expecting bigger and bigger AI models, Sam Altman's saying that's not going to happen. It's not a surprising stance, really. The law of diminishing returns, it very much applies here, making models continuously larger and larger. At some point you're spending more to train and maintain those models than you're gaining in quantifiable returns. So what Sam Altman's saying here is really, we need to look at ways to make models more efficient, more productive, better overall, without just continuously growing them in size. And Jeff, you and I have had some really good discussions on the show around the cost of managing data, the cost of managing large-scale models. It's not small. And one really interesting takeaway from this article was it cost over $100 million to train GPT-4. So when you're talking about these big AI models, it's not like, $10-12 you're training these models. $100 million to train GPT-4. That's a lot of money. So that's where we're headed. Not bigger models, but more efficient models, and looking at using the infrastructure more effectively. And there's also a carbon footprint there. We brought this up on a show, Jeff, I can't remember, it was a couple months ago, but the cloud computing industry has now outpaced the airline industry in terms of carbon footprint. Yeah. We need to be conscious about our data footprint and about the impacts that these architectural decisions have upon the environment. So, Jeff, what are your thoughts on large-scale models starting to scale back in the age of the race in AI?
I think it's actually following a natural progression. We grow these things out, and then we figure out how to make them more efficient, shed them back down from the learning. So somebody like ChatGPT, OpenAI, they have to spend the $100 million, right? And they have to learn, and they have to iterate, and they have to break through. I mean, it's part of the interesting part of the $30 billion valuation they have, and the $10 billion that Microsoft has in them is like, are they ever going to get that full return? Well, I get to sit in a cheap seat and find out. We'll see. But the other part is they break through, and the others get to start to leverage that knowledge and realize. And what what Tanis is talking about is instead of growing the parameters that you're going to throw at this model and then try to get it to consume it and produce something is you start to use different ways to interact with it. Human feedback being one of the biggest, right? That does that really mean it's an AI? No, technically it's probably a machine learning then when you start to do those kind of thing. But if anybody saw the memes recently of the Google talk, AI, that was the whole cut. They just cut every time I was watching it this morning and I was like, that is hilarious. Cause that sounds like every conversation I hear right now is like, did I just hear AI again? I see you keep using that word, man. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Yeah.
You know, like it's AI, you know, to go to one of my favorite movie references that's more of a machine learning algorithm, right? It's more about taking the feedback and the specific use cases that you need for it and then stacking those use cases and allowing the models to learn from one another in a way that makes sense. So yeah, we got to be careful of our carbon footprint. We've got to know what we're doing with it. And I think everything, you know, expands and contracts in our world quite a bit. I'm interested, Ryan, you're sitting here looking at a lot of what's going on. I wonder what your take is on the AI models and on kind of this impact in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no AI expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do. I mean, I do see almost like a value in like segmentation, and I mean, maybe there's a fine line between machine learning and AI, like you were just bringing up. You know, we do some machine learning stuff that's turned into be really valuable for construction for a specific use case that is very segmented, right? We would never turn that into a bigger model because it's focused on construction and identifying things via photos and videos, but definitely almost maybe like a segmentation of AI models where it could be focused on whether it be a financial system based off of, you know, the financial sector, maybe engineering, construction. But these grand models, from even just from like a Tanis said, the carbon footprint side, it's like it's throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it, right?
And the last part of that too is it becoming usable and moving things to the edge. They've got to be learned at the bigger level and then moved to the edge case of, you know, so if you're trying to use some sort of new machinery on a job site and it's processing what it's seeing, then that's got to happen at the edge. So the model can't be huge, right? It's got to be small. It's got to be efficient. So there's lots of that rapid return, or else, you know, it's not going to happen. Well, we're going to go pivot, and Sam's going to be in the news twice. So we're going to agree with Sam, and now I'm going to start a debate. So this is from Fortune. And this is OpenAI CEO Sam Altman says the remote work, quote, experiment was a mistake and, quote, it's over. Now, somebody just swerved their car. Somebody else is yelling at me. Hopefully you didn't break your phone as you slapped it because you're running out to get whatever it is you need or do whatever errand it is you need right now. So I'm not saying I agree. I'm saying, though, we are seeing the kickback. And this is, you know, Sam Altman isn't averse to change. He helped kickstart current AI race. But he still thinks startups are most effective when employees work together in an office. And he says the idea of fully remote work becoming the norm has come and gone. He said this week at a fireside chat in San Francisco organized by the fintech company Stripe. So you can actually jump on and listen to the entire thing if you want. And he's calling it the worst mistake ever. I don't know that I fully agree. Yeah. But I also, I want to balance this because we're also not just seeing this from him. You know, he references David Reicher from Lyft, you know, after they laid off 1,000 employees, 26% of their workforce, and they're bringing people back in Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday with Tuesdays recommended. That's an interesting way to put it together. Yep. Well, I imagine that's so we get away from 4-day weekends is what I think there was a misunderstanding that people were doing. And then there's the James Clark of digital marketing firm ClearLink worries employees might be secretly working multiple jobs. hey, James, I'm going to tell you, this next generation all has a side hustle. So get used to it. Their side hustle sometimes becomes their day job in the end. So you ought to embrace it and understand it and realize, some of it's there. So for me, I'm on the fence, right? I'm in the middle of this because I believe that there is a good use case for a lot of remote work. We've proven that it helps ourselves. It helps us out. It helps a project manager that's focusing on multiple different job sites not have to run to those job sites and completely be inefficient and focus digitally on what's going on. And then here's where I balance is then go to the job site that needs help.
Yeah.
Right. The job where you need to be there, you can have the most impact by being on the ground, boots there, understanding what's going on, understanding the players that are involved, and having an impact. Those are things you can't get remote. And I think that to me is what Sam's trying to say is that we can be 100% remote, can work forever. He's right. It can't. There has to be an intentionality around a hybrid work where we're connected together, whether that be, specific points that we pick out. Hey, project kickoff, we're going to be all together. We talked about IPD and IFOA and Tanis, it not going the way it was supposed to, and the contract versus the delivery being different. Well, look, that's because we didn't kick it off correctly. That's because we didn't embrace it. We didn't look each other in the eyes. We didn't have that trust, create that collaboration, create that, environment between ourselves. We got to do that. It has to be done. I mean, yes, there's moments in a global pandemic when you're just going to have to do what you got to do, but we're past that now. So I'm interested, Tanis, in your take on this as well, because I know you're a hybrid worker like I am.
I am, and I've been a hybrid worker for a long time, and this is a topic I'm passionate about. If you follow me on LinkedIn, this is a topic I dig into from time to time, as well as on Twitter. And I mean, Sam Altman took a lot of flack on Twitter over this comment, and he's not the first in the last, I say 6 to 12 months, because I can't remember when the last Gladwell podcast where he brought this topic up and he was slamming remote work. Same thing. He took a lot of flack on social media over this. Remote work, hybrid work has become part of the business world. It's not going away. So I'm going to put my Sam Altman hat on, and I can appreciate where he's coming from. When you have small teams, it can be difficult to get the same type of collaboration that you're going to get just naturally bumping into each other in an office and getting around a whiteboard or a digital whiteboard or smartboard and ideating. But if you're intentional about doing that in a virtual or hybrid environment, it's completely possible. If you sit back and just expect a team to organically collaborate with no structure, no intentionality around it, they may or may not. So agreed, that can be a challenge. But as a leader, it's your job to make sure that is happening. That's your responsibility. So putting my Tanis hat back on, remote work works. Just talk to people who are working remotely. It's quite effective. Hybrid work works. It's also very effective. I'm an extroverted person by nature. I like connecting with people. I like being in person. I spend a lot of time at events. I travel to the office. The Trillium team, for those that follow us, we're hybrid, right? We work from home, we travel, and it's very, very effective. We're a 20-person team. We work with organizations all over the world. We spend lots of time traveling. We connect at in-person summits. We have team members that grab coffee and collaborate at industry events together. You have to be intentional about it. If you just sit back and hope people are going to collaborate, yeah, maybe they will, maybe they won't, just depending on the nature of the team. But if you're intentional about it, you can absolutely get great collaboration, great creativity. And I can sit here confidently and say that because I see it happen every single day. And if you look at the commute time, the amount of time you spend in a vehicle, if your commute time is 30 minutes on the way to the office and 30 minutes home, and let's all be real in big cities, if you live in Houston, you're not commuting 30 minutes anywhere. But let's go with 30 minutes just to keep it practical so nobody's, slamming me on YouTube saying, oh, that's totally unreasonable. 30 minutes each way, it's an hour a day. 250 working days a year. That's if you're working 50 weeks and never taking a day off. Yeah, that's 250 hours a year. You're sitting in your car in traffic, hopefully listen to the ConTech Crew or some other cool tech podcast, but it's 250 hours you're on the road. So that works out, if my real quick math is right, 31 8-hour days per year. That is a lot of time you could be spending on other productive things. And if you have young kids at home, family care responsibilities, I mean, life is all about finding that balance, right? And trying to juggle all those things. Remote work, hybrid work gives you the ability to have some of that balance. And, if that works for people, fantastic. It's going to allow us, especially in the construction industry, to attract more people into a workforce where we're seeing lots of people leaving because of retirement, right? The world is changing.
Mhm.
We need more flexible work structures. And I think hybrid work, remote work, whatever works for you. Some people like being in the office. That's cool too. You do your thing. But hybrid work is a great way to keep people engaged, attract great talent into the workforce. I'm a big fan of it. So Sam Altman, Malcolm Gladwell, I'm sorry, I vehemently disagree on this one. It can be effective under the right structure.
Well, Ryan, I'm interested there because you probably
Yeah.
you can't do your job without it, right?
No, I that brings up a point of, I think it's industry and role specific in some
Yes.
respects. So like my job, because I work with people and accounts all over the world. And I have phone calls early in the morning. I have a lot of late night calls. I wouldn't be doing that in an office. There's just no way. And I got a couple of young kids, so I'm able to in the mornings usually get them to school, take them to school, but then nighttime I'm on calls. But look at like a I don't know, a large project, construction project, and even a lot of the teams themselves aren't even in the same city, same state, same country sometimes. If you're executing a project out in the field in, I don't know, say an East Coast state, but you've got maybe a design engineering team that's based on the West Coast or even in, another country. What does it matter where those people are? You need to get together and collaborate. You're going to be doing it remotely anyways. And then having those odd, get-togethers on site or at a dedicated spot. I've been a remote worker for, I guess, so pushing a decade at this point now, and big believer in it. I see a lot of, I still see a lot of collaboration. I still, see an inherent value of getting together with teams every so often and just hammering out in the dark, smoky room, and coming up with, posing problems and coming up with solutions for them, but coming up with like a roadmap of where you want to go for that solution. And then everyone disband and let's go put your head down and work at home. Right. I think that's it. I don't think there's a either or answer to this one. It's really depends on the company, the type of industry, where you are in a particular project, where you are in the particular stage of your company. I mean, I think maybe this is being focused on early startup stage, which, yeah, I guess maybe there's a lot more need for that. Let's get into a room, bring in a bunch of pizzas, and let's just not leave until we figure it out. But that's not reality for 90% of the working world.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'll summarize this real quickly. I think Sam's trying to get the Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in a garage moment too much.
Yeah.
Those moments need to happen, and they will.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to drawing this back to construction and construction in general and the technology and the evolution. It's leadership. It comes down to intentional leadership. And I think, Sam, you might be mailing in a hard one and just trying to snap back to the other side. Yet you don't want us to do that with ChatGPT and AI, and you want us all to become these knowledge workers of the future. Well, guess what? You're going to have to lean in and learn how to do that a little bit yourself. And with that, my last one is, hey, look, I got my Canadian team, so I got to do a Canadian article. So this is from Construct Connect Canada. So it's canada.constructconnect.com. Future of Work event aims to bring youth into construction through technology. And I love it. It talks a lot about, on April 22nd, dozens of industry members, parents, and kids gathered at an event that highlighted technology as a way to get youth interested in a career in construction and skilled trades. We have a marketing problem in our industry, and they highlight it really well. We want people to understand, young people in general, that plumbing is not cleaning toilets, right? That this is actually far more than what it seems to be and what it's been painted as over the years. And we've got a problem to change that. Because we have a worker shortage. And it highlights Amy Marks, who they call the YouTube personality, and she's a VP at Autodesk and construction expert, known as the Queen of Prefab. And I think this highlights a couple of things, that this is an industry that is working towards diversity, working towards including women. So having someone like Amy, like Tanis, so that young women have someone they can see themselves in and see a career in. Tanis, you came up through the fields yourself. So this is an opportunity and something we have to change. But key to me here was we have to include parents. One of the things is, and Ryan, you said this in pre-call, was you were kind of voluntold that you were going to go get a degree, probably because of some misunderstanding along the way, or some misunderstanding is the wrong word, some sort of social lean that we have to go that way. And we need events like this. We need time like this to change that view. So I think, I'm interested, Ryan, and changing that view it's really important. I mean, look where you are today, and who knew that that's where you're going to end up?
I didn't. That's actually a bit of a passion of mine. I think, when I was finishing up high school, it was the end of the 90s, and there was, a lot of shop programs and shop classes were shutting down. They weren't backfilling the teachers. So, I was fortunate. I got to go into the wood shop. I got to do metalworks. I got to go do car mechanics and all that. But it wasn't long after that where those just didn't exist anymore. And they're starting to come back a bit more. And I think the other thing too is when when we're talking to youth about construction, there's so much of I think there's a misunderstanding with the, whether it be the high school counselors or just in society in general, that construction is so much more than just, like you said, like the plumbing. It's not just unclogging a toilet. There's so much more to it, and there's a whole slew of things that people can expand their careers into, whether it be through technology. It might be getting into. I've always thought, I had heard about project management or construction management earlier on in my life, I probably would have jumped into that earlier than I did. Or QA, QC, or health and safety, or getting into some of the really cool stuff with the augmented reality and the BIM modeling that's taking place now. If we don't show youth that, they don't have an idea of actually what there is. So I see it's a huge value. I think, however, we can get more people coming into the industry, because we are running into a real problem now with getting, across all industry, whether it be residential, commercial, industrial, heavy civil, we just don't have enough people to do it.
Yeah, Tanis, I'm interested in your thoughts, especially it's happening near you.
Absolutely. I live on Vancouver Island, and residential construction here is booming, right? We live in, I was griping about the weather earlier, what should be one of the warmer parts of Canada. I'm a little jealous, Ryan. You've got more sunshine than me, but the residential construction market is busy, and the common comment that you're hearing from contractors is we can't find people. There's just not enough skilled trades professionals out there to actually do all the work. And that resonates across industry sectors. It doesn't matter if you're in residential, commercial, infrastructure, industrial, energy, sustainability projects. Everybody's struggling right now because of the talent shortage that we have in the industry. So I love the fact that Amy, and shout out to Amy Marks on this for representing women in the industry, right? Because the stats, I mean, our numbers are we wish there were more. We wish there was more women that were considering careers in construction. If you're out there listening and you're not sure, or you think construction might be a cool space to build a career, let me tell you, it's the coolest space to build a career. I would not change industry. You couldn't pay me to change industries. I love this industry. And Amy's out there telling her story and, telling the story of technology and really changing the image of what it means to work in construction. And that we do so many cool things with tech. And I mean, you hear about it on the show. We're discussing digital twinning, drones, augmented reality, virtual reality, full life cycle construction, project management. I mean, that is cool at its core. And there's a real perception challenge in the industry that we're not tech savvy. We don't work with tech. There's not a lot of tech in construction. In some cases, in some areas, yes, we're learning and growing, but in other areas, there's drones flying around site, like Ryan mentioned, every day. That we work in one of the coolest industries in the world. It's great to see events like this that are helping change that perception around the need to go to university or college, get that 4-year degree. There are ample career opportunities in this industry. You can have great professional development opportunity. You can earn a fantastic living. I mean, I saw an article a couple months ago about plumbers, I think it was in Washington State, making, $120,000, $130,000 a year. You can build a fantastic financial income learning a skilled trade. So, if you're on the fence about a career in construction or you're looking for an industry pivot, this is the place to be. It is a fantastic place to build a career.
Just going to say, I was at the ConExpo event 2 months back in Las Vegas. It's the biggest construction conference in the world. Happens only every 3 years. And being somebody who's been in this industry for so long, it's like being a kid in a candy store. Some of the really cool technology, there is equipment I'd never even dreamed of was possible. That's there, and people are getting, they're getting access to this. They're buying these pieces of equipment, spider cranes and whatnot, that you wouldn't even hear of before, but, that whole space is, even for people that are, like us that have been in the industry for years, you're seeing this rapid change, and just, it's exciting. It made me want to go back in the field, get to use some of this equipment, right? So,
yep. Get to use some of it. Well, and hopefully it's an opportunity to, if you're raising kids, to make them realize that the future of construction is a place where they're going to be. And with that, we got to wrap her up. So Ryan, thanks again for coming along with us today. It was great to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Tanis, as always, it's great to have you.
Always great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for a great show, Ryan. This was a really interesting interview. And Jeff, as always, I look forward to the next one.
Can't wait. And thank you for tuning in today to Geek Out for our interview with Ryan Posnikoff. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.